Welcome, everybody. Here we are in the European Legal Leaders topic of the Ars Boni Legal Fest. It is just for some of the new joiners that Ars Boni is a Hungarian legal community, and they provide career services and trainings to legal professionals and law students. And it is one of our first time that we have these English projects, and we welcome here Dalibor from Queritius and Joel from KPMG, and they will tell us super interesting things about their path. And could you please start by introducing yourself in just one or two short sentences?
Joel, do you want to go first?
Absolutely, Dalibor. Thank you very much. Yes, so my name is Zsolt Szatmári. I'm originally from Budapest, graduated from ELTE, Faculty of Law. And right after my graduation, I started working in the Big Four as a tax consultant. Spent in Hungary 7 years of my career before moving to Amsterdam in the Netherlands, where I worked for IBFD, which is an international knowledge organization in the field of international taxation. After that, I moved in-house to a Japanese manufacturing company as their European VAT manager. And now recently I relocated to Geneva in Switzerland, joining KPMG in their international VAT practice as a manager.
So that means it's over to me. So good evening, everyone. My name is Dalibor Valincic, and I'm a Croatian national, and I'm a partner at the law firm of Queritius, which is a dispute resolution boutique, as we like to call this in our market. So I graduated from the law school of the University of Zagreb, and then for a short while I worked in a smaller Croatian law office. After which I moved to work in an international law firm, Wolf Dice, and I was there for 13 years, and I made a partner there in that firm. Then I worked a little while with Deckert LLP, which is the U.S. firm in Washington, D.C., and then I moved back to Zagreb. I joined Queritius, and so right now I'm a partner with Queritius, where I spend my time now full time in Zagreb.
Yeah, thank you very much. So, what do you think? How a surprise would be the career starter or the first year law students you once have been, seeing what you are doing now? Where have you always been attracted to tax and litigation respectively, or how did it shape in the past?
Dalibor, if you can take this one first.
Okay, good. I'll do that. So I think overall, a young Dalibor being a student would be very surprised with what I do right now, not because I do litigation and arbitration mostly, because this is something that I had slight preference even during my university time. But I think the surprise for the young Dalibor would come, for working in an international environment, which is certainly something that I didn't even know that this existed at the time when I was at my studies. But and we will discuss this later. But I think things developed well for me. So I did manage to start working on international cases, and maybe I'll explain later how this came about. But I think that would be probably the biggest surprise, that working in the international environment, this is definitely not something that I was thinking of when I was a student.
Yes, in my case, maybe the surprise would be even bigger, because my family background is not really in the direction of the legal field. most of my family members are in the medical field, so therefore, even choosing to go to law school was kind of a break with the family tradition, so to say. But the other thing that in my specific case was maybe a strange case is that tax advisory is not one of those classic legal fields. So, you know, when you enter law school, that's usually not the thing that you think that, okay, right from the start, I'm going to focus on fiscal law and taxation, at least not in Hungary. For example, in Western Europe, you do see this, that you have majors starting right from the start in the direction of taxation. But in case of Hungary, this whole orientation came much later in my studies, and it came almost by a chance encounter, and it was a very defining encounter, and I'm honestly very happy with the outcome, because at the end of the day, even as a young kid, I was hoping for an international career, and at the end of the day, it happened. So cannot complain about that.
Impressive. So studying law is used to be a long journey, but with the rise of artificial intelligence, the conversation around legal education is changing. What advice would you give to today's law students on where to concentrate their efforts if they aspire to become successful leading lawyer at the European level? It is like you were also like shaping in the meantime, but now it is even a little more not predictable. So I think everybody's really curious about what your advice would be.
It's a tricky question, honestly speaking, and also a tricky question because for the last 11 years, I have been teaching at various university courses. So obviously, this, even as an educator, this question is on your mind. What's the best approach, when you're holding a course or a seminar? I think that at least in the field of taxation, and we will get back to this, but in the field of taxation, especially in the field of indirect taxes, there's a lot of technological development. There's a lot of efforts in terms of automation, in terms of introducing machine learning, and so on and so forth. So this is definitely a very valid question. Some people have a bit more of a doom and gloom type of approach to this, that soon the whole field will just simply die out because artificial intelligence will take over. In my opinion, I don't think that's the case. I think that artificial intelligence gives opportunities. It gives opportunities to, on one hand, reduce the number of the very kind of manual type of repetitive work. So that gives you the effort, the opportunity to focus your efforts on more value-added things. And on the other hand, it also gives a lot of, say, technical questions. For example, from a taxation perspective, how do you, for example, want to tax eventually artificial intelligence? So I think that my advice to the younger generation would be is to kind of maintain a multidisciplinary mindset. So obviously you're a lawyer, so that's the framework where you will be coming from. But it's always good to be a bit open to, say, economics, maybe even a bit to the field of IT. I myself learned a bit of Python coding just out of interest. And I think that it's very valuable, even if you don't necessarily use it on a daily basis, but it definitely helps you to understand the challenges in this evolving economy.
Yeah, and if I may just, I agree with everything that Joel said. I think this was exactly to the point. And maybe just to add one more thing, I think that when both of us were at the university and we were still, young practicing lawyers, access to information was very different. and it was much, much more limited compared to what it is now. I think right now there is an overflow of information of every sort, and I think then for the young aspiring lawyers, it would be very important to be able to master the research of information that is out there, because we ourselves did not have this problem because we did not have so much information on our hand. But I think now that this is it's called democratization of the knowledge, as it happened right now in today's society. I think the challenge switched from finding the information in the way how we used to search for the information. Now I think that the focus is now on finding the right information in this ocean of new information, and I think this is going to be a very, very important skill for any aspiring young lawyer. And in that respect, the use of AI will probably be the key, but then the key for the person using the AI would be how to master the AI to find the right information. So I think maybe just to add on everything that Joel said, I think that's maybe the key skill for today's young aspiring lawyers.
Maybe Dalibor, just because honestly, you really hit a home run with this about verifying information. That's indeed, I think, quite crucial. We have seen this with artificial intelligence, with ChatGPT. Information will look good, not necessarily valid information. So a critical mindset is indeed crucial.
Yeah.
Yeah, indeed true. It's harder to filter in the today world. And the problem from the access to information became to access to the right information.
That's right.
Yeah, this is also somewhat because the use of this kind of AI tools already leads us to the international market. And I think a lot of students or young professionals from our audience is also interested in this, that what do you think that helps you succeed, not just as national, but at an international level? And what would you recommend to the aspiring young people who would like to succeed in an international market?
Ooh, this is the tough one, I think, because maybe because the same things do not work now anymore that what used to work back then when I was a young aspiring lawyer. But I can say what changed the game for me, and that was so I did my LLM in London. And at that time, so we are talking about 2008, 2009, at that time, it wasn't for the young lawyers from Central Eastern Europe, it wasn't so common to have international education. And I think at the time, it was really a game changer for me, because it gave me certain international exposure, to the ways of learning and to the ways of doing things and so on. I think right now for young students, especially in Europe, there are now Erasmus programs. Everybody can go and study abroad. But I think partially that would still work. For this international exposure, and studying abroad is definitely a very valuable experience for anyone who wants to kind of propel him or herself into the international arena. There are also many internship programs that a lot of law firms are offering, and I think the market of the Central and Eastern Europe is becoming more and more attractive for big international law firms, and then therefore these big international law firms are accepting candidates from more often accepting candidates from this region. So I think it's a mix of many things, but trying to propel yourself into this international arena through higher education or internship or doing something like that usually helps. For example, Queritius has an internship program for international students. I'm pretty sure that KPMG has the same program as well. So that's maybe something that a young aspiring lawyer should try.
Definitely. So I think that law students, and as a matter of fact, all students should be taken full advantage of all these programs during their studies. I myself was also an Erasmus scholar in Helsinki during my university years. So I think that this is one thing that you can do already during your studies. On the other hand, if you're thinking about an international career, especially as a lawyer, in the field of law, it's obviously more difficult to find opportunities abroad because many of the legal fields are, of course, heavily reliant on domestic legislation and your knowledge of that. And it doesn't necessarily translate directly to another jurisdiction. So therefore, if you still think of going into this direction, it's worth focusing on one of those legal fields which does have an international aspect. So I guess one is, for example, litigation. Taxation definitely is one of those fields. So you have to be smart about this. And in my experience, at least, it helps a lot if you already have a couple of years of experience under your belt by the time you're applying abroad. Because you're so much more valuable with that kind of exposure. And you also have a much better negotiating power when it comes to recruitment as compared to someone who is a fresh graduate.
Yeah, thank you. So both of you mentioned the importance of international studies and traineeships. So, and you both are from the Central Eastern European region. How are the Croatian and Hungarian lawyers perceived globally today? What do you think? What is your experience? Have you faced any challenges?
Well, honestly, I never felt a specific challenge from a professional perspective relating to my nationality. Obviously, say Hungarian universities, they are recognized, they are respected, but obviously they are not, the most well-known universities from say from Europe or globally. So if you're thinking about, for example, taxation courses, definitely you have a couple of Western European universities which are very well known. And of course, if you have graduated from one of those, then say that's more easily recognized. But again, I'm getting back to the fact that on the other hand, if you have gathered enough years of professional experience, then this doesn't mean that you're in any kind of disadvantage. So on the other hand, yes. So of course, if you're living abroad, you will be meeting various types of people, and my experience is that not everyone has sufficient information about, for example, the CEE region. So many people will, approach you and approach the fact that you're Hungarian coming from second or third hand experiences. And that can be either pleasant or unpleasant. But I never experienced this in a professional setting. This might happen in a, say, more personal setting.
Yeah. No, I agree with everything that you said. And maybe just to add, there are more and more young lawyers who actually work either from Hungary or Croatia or from any country in this region, who work in London, in Washington D.C., in New York. So I think young professionals who develop their careers are spreading the word about this region as well. So I think right now I don't think that anyone starting the career in international field would actually have many challenges in terms of coming from this region. But at the same time, I think the region itself is becoming more aware of the amount of sophistication and professionalism that we have within this region. And I can mention, for example, in my field in international arbitration, we recently founded a group which is called CEE, which is kind of the short, the short is like arbitration CEE. And there you have a lot of international arbitration practitioners who get together, discuss topics and so on. And these are the people who live in the CEE region, who all of them who worked in the big international law firms, and we get together, share knowledge and so on. So maybe for young students that's obviously interested in international arbitration, can check out what this organization is doing, because I think it's also a good platform for somebody who is aspiring to get exposed in international work.
Yes, so we are highlighting also the importance of the regional cooperations and how they can be used. That's super useful information. Thank you. Now I will ask a question I think a lot of people from our audience is interested in, but they wouldn't dare to ask, especially not in a job interview. So I have now the opportunity. So you are both in international careers, and they are often seen as involving lots of travel and obligations. And how do you find work-life balance? Does it exist in your career, or do they exclude each other? What do you think? What is your experience with this?
First of all, I think it depends on whom you ask, because I think if anyone asks this question to my wife, it will get the probably very different answer that I will give. But I think I can say for myself, it is intense, obviously, but I know a lot of people who do exclusively domestic work, and their life is equally intense as mine is. So I don't think that being an international lawyer really makes that much of a difference, other than probably traveling. But I think overall, you yourself need to be disciplined about things that you do, and I think that everything can be managed, but obviously it is demanding. It's demanding. We need to be clear about this. And I don't know, Joel, do you have a secret to share?
Well, if I would have that secret, I wish. I fully agree with Dalibor. I think that the amount of workload doesn't necessarily change due to the fact that you're working in an international field or a national field. It basically, if you have enough work, that it's a good representation that you're doing something right, because clients are coming to you with their questions. On the other hand, I think that it also depends whether you're passionate about the field that you're working in, because whether you have that passion or not really truly influences what you consider to be, strictly speaking, work and strictly speaking life. So for example, I do a lot of tax related say additional work, research projects or teaching projects, which I'm doing at the expense of my free time. On the other hand, I enjoy it. So I'm not looking at it as pure work. I'm looking at it as something, say, in between. And I think it's very fortunate if during your career you manage to find a field where you can find this passion. I'm not saying that it's something that's 24/7. Of course, there will be periods when you're exhausted, when you feel a bit burned out. And in my personal opinion, one of the good ways of avoiding it, it's actually physical exercises. I think that it's a very good way of unwinding. So I definitely recommend people to, after exercising your brain so much, maybe exercise your body as well. Yes, in terms of traveling, I think it's because you mentioned, Borbala, that this might be something that comes as a question for many of the audience, and I know this because I have been there. That people, when they're looking at it from the outside, they think that, oh, it's so nice, all those travels, seeing places, and of course it's nice. I'm not going to deny that part, but you also have to realize that work trips are mainly work and less about the trip. For example, my wife could attest to this because she's traveling much more for work than I do, and she's completely exhausted of it after a while. So, I think that whatever you do, you have to be conscious about it. So, in my field, a lot of the job interviews involve this kind of question. Okay, how much is the work-related travel? So is it 40% of your time, 50% of your time, however it is? And I think that, depending on your personal family, whatever circumstances, you have to make this call. Does this meet your expectations or not? So I think that one additional thing that is good for your mental health is to be conscious about your own choices.
Yeah. Anyway, in this travel topic, have you experienced any change that you travel less after the COVID, or it didn't change it so much?
It did change for me. It did change for me. Certainly, there is less travel. Not substantially less travel, but there is less travel. In my field, in international arbitration, we would, for each and every session, with the opposing party and the tribunal and so on, we would travel somewhere. Now I think it's becoming much more customary to do everything via the video calls as we are doing it right now, and only when it's really, really necessary then we actually travel. So there is less travel. That's certainly true. Not that much, but it's still a different thing.
In my case, I can also attest to this. Just before COVID hit, I was traveling for business back to back from Pakistan to China and back, and these type of occasions, they don't happen anymore. So you definitely see this, that especially trainings, they have moved online to a great extent. A lot of them are either live sessions or even pre-recorded ones. So for this reason, there's less travel. On the other hand, what I do see in the tax community, that there is an increasing need for in-face meetings, so in-person meetings. So it's just obviously these video calls are excellent, and it really gets the job done. What they are not good for is networking. And since this is also a good part of our job, networking and business development, these kind of activities can only be done effectively when it's done in person.
Yeah, so the technology is important, but it luckily, in my opinion, doesn't change the importance of human interaction. That's an important thing. But now with this question, and after we start to get questions from the audience, and I encourage them to ask more because I don't want to monopolize this, right? But I really would like to know about this, that technology has already started to transform the legal profession. And how do you use artificial intelligence in your work? How do you see these things happening and hiding in the future?
I'm very curious, Dalibor, how
Yeah.
it looks like in litigation.
It's not, so I have to say, there is, I suspect that Zsolt is using, artificial intelligence much more than I do. I think in my field, there is a lot of discussion and talk about the artificial intelligence much more than it actually has any practical use. There are many attempts, but the world of international, so there is a use of artificial intelligence in the field of like legal research, which is a very important element in international arbitration. However, a lot of international arbitration also depends on your presentation, and the wordsmithing, the way you write things and so on. And there, artificial intelligence is not. It's still. It's not something that that can be used. So I think in my field, maybe maybe the legal research is the area where that is starting to be used, and it will certainly be used more and more. But I think there is a part of generally litigation and international arbitration that will always depend on a person delivering the message, and I think that part will not change so quickly. But I suspect that maybe the change is coming more quickly to Zsolt's field, I guess.
It's true. So it's true, but it's motivated on one hand by the business sector, obviously. So as quickly as things are changing for our clients, of course we have to keep up with that. But the other driving force in the field of taxation, it's also the governments and the tax authorities. So this is a definite trend that you see, that countries are investing quite heavily into introducing technology, gathering real-time data, analyzing real-time data, big data, with various machine learning techniques. And in a sense, you could even say that some tax authorities around the world, they are, way ahead in this type of technological development compared to many private sector businesses. So it's a very interesting trend in taxation. And for this reason, of course, if businesses are required to, for example, constantly provide tax authorities with real-time data, that means that their data has to be good enough. It has to be solid enough so that they are not triggering constantly tax audits, for example. And this is where tax technology comes in, and where, for example, us as tax advisors can support our clients. Because, for example, if you set up solid tax determination logics in tax engines for the accounting systems of these businesses, or if you introduce other kind of processes that generate this solid data, then obviously that is a big value added. So that's the reason, and coming back to like an earlier question that we were discussing, that's the reason why I believe that anyone who is aspiring to go into the field of taxation, it's very important to, of course, have that kind of legal knowledge available to you. But at the same time, you do have to have a bit of this IT mindset, especially in terms of, say, I don't want to use like big words, but a kind of a project manager mindset of having that framework, how you can, translate text rules to an IT department, so then they can translate it into algorithms. So in this sense, we do see quite a lot of these technological developments of AI, and I do believe, I strongly believe that this is just going to get even faster in the field of taxation.
Yeah, so based on what you said, now it also determines how much someone is interested in technology, what field they should choose. Because if they really don't like technology, probably tax is not the best idea. Or
I guess in a sense that's true.
Yeah.
But it's I think it's very difficult to imagine a young graduate who is really not interested in technology nowadays. I think because I think young lives have been influenced by technology much more than we were influenced by technology, but when we were kids. So
yeah, certainly. And your answers actually lead us very well to one of the questions from the audience. What skill, personal qualities are you looking for in an intern, fresh graduate in a hiring process?
I can start with saying what I say to all the young students who come either for internship at our firm or who apply for jobs. I think everyone and including me, when I left the university, I actually knew very little about the job, right? About how the job is done. So we never we never require a high amount of knowledge of legal knowledge in anyone's mind. I think that the right attitude towards your profession, your obligations, and your work is actually something that we're trying to find. So someone who has many interests and has engaged in many things, people who maybe who graduated from the law school, but then at the same time were engaged in some sports, or have are playing in a rock band or something. These kind of people, at least to me, they show that they have many interests which they followed up on, and this suggests to me that they have the right kind of attitude towards the work. So I think being a responsible person is the number one skill that I would always look for in a young associate, and that we have somebody that we can rely upon. And I think that being responsible will bring you everything else that you need to know about your work as you start working. Because at least for me, and I think it's probably the case for many other students, you really start learning when you start working, right? Before that, the law university is just a preparation for the actual learning that you will start when you start doing the job. But then it's very important that you're responsible about what you're doing, and if you are responsible and you have this right attitude, I think only the sky is the limit then for your career.
Yes, on one hand, I fully agree with you, Dalibor, and I think that all of us who graduated from law school, we came out with this type of mindset that we put a lot of effort into it, we know a lot, and yes, maybe the first couple of months or even years, they are a harsh learning curve, because on one hand, indeed, so on one hand, there's a lot of technical knowledge that you still need to acquire, but also in my opinion, a lot of soft skills, at least in the Big Four, I learned a lot of soft skills that, you know, otherwise you would have a difficult time acquiring. So for this reason, indeed, on what I would be looking for, and I think that this comes partially from the fact that taxation is quite a precise area. So, you know, numbers in a sense don't lie. So attention to detail, it's crucial. And another thing, it's honesty. And I think that honesty, it's a very key quality that you're looking for in a junior person, because as Dalibor also mentioned, we are not expecting people to know. Actually, we are expecting people not to know. But at the same time, we also expect a person to be open about if you know, if the task is not clear, if they don't know where to start, if they, for example, were asked to look into something, but they didn't. I mean, sometimes it happens, especially with juniors. Sometimes it happens that they get bombarded with work. They think that one task was more important than the other. That's all fine. I just want to know that, you know, if you didn't do something, you didn't do something. Fine, I can work around it, but I would rather know it upfront than, you know, figuring it out afterwards.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. That's absolutely true. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, so it seems like that the personality and soft skills are even more important than pure knowledge itself. And yeah, and that's interesting that it leads us a little bit to the next question, that it is directly here for Dalibor, I think, because it is for someone who is interested in international arbitration. What is your advice where to start after graduating from law school? But after, if Zsolt, you could answer the same question regarding to tax, it would be great, because I'm sure that others are also interested in this.
Yeah. Well, I think, as I said, after graduating from law school, then, you know, all of us, you know, started just learning on the job. So I think, you know, maybe trying to find, you know, either a job or even an internship in an office in a firm that does international arbitration is usually a good start, because for two reasons. I think, first of all, it will provide you with a test whether you actually like arbitration or not, because, you know, maybe from the outside it looks very different from what it actually is. So I think it will be a good test to see whether you know the international arbitration is really the field that you would like to get engaged. But then also it will provide you with the, you know, with the appropriate training to advance in this legal area, and then, you know, through working, you will start to expand your network of people that you know, and certainly, and slowly grow your network. And so I think, you know, that's probably the best way how to start. I know that, you know, in our countries, and I don't know whether this particular question is coming from someone in Hungary or maybe some other country in the region, there are not many firms that do arbitration, but there are a few, right? And for example, Quirishis is one of them. So maybe do your homework before and see, you know, who are the players in your particular market who do this kind of work, and then try to apply there, and then probably, you know, I'm pretty sure that it will pay out.
In terms of taxation, for the same question, I think that one of the best entry points is starting working either as an intern or as a junior in one of the Big Four consulting firms. The reason is that on one hand, obviously there's a lot of knowledge accumulated in these organizations, and they have big clientele. So the types of projects you will be exposed to will be complex. almost right from the start. And additionally, these organizations, they have the capacity to train people. Because, for example, if you would start in the tax department of an in-house tax team, often these teams are spread very, very thinly. So people really don't have the time to coach you. So your learning curve will be, in my opinion, at least a slower one. And additionally, I think, Dalibor, you mentioned LLM programs. I think this is also a very good entry point, searching for a good taxation LLM program, attending where you can build your network. You can also get very nice internships with various firms which are sponsoring these LLM programs. And especially if you want to, or if you're thinking about an international career, usually graduates of these LLM programs, they do get that chance to start in that given country, working in let's say a junior role. So I think that this is the most straightforward way you can get into this.
That's interesting. Actually, yeah, LLM was really important when I graduated. It was around 2011. And nowadays, a lot of students are asking on LinkedIn from me that what do I find more important? Then they start to work as early as possible, or they invest in an LLM. What do you think about this in your respective field?
That's a very, very tough question, honestly. Because indeed, getting a certification doesn't necessarily mean still that you can apply it effectively in your practice. So you should not look at an LLM program as a kind of magic grail that will solve all your problems. In my opinion, on the other hand, maybe the best combination, at least in the field of taxation, gathering 1-2 years of experience, afterwards going to an LLM program, because then you have something to build that knowledge on. And then the LLM will solidify that knowledge. And that will be also very well perceived, in my opinion and in my experience, by employers. I think that starting an LLM program right after graduation might be a bit too early. For some people, it works out, don't get me wrong, but in my opinion, it works better, say, the other way around.
Yeah, and this is exactly what I wanted to say. My experience is also that, 2-3 years, maybe even, it's not too late. So I think getting an LLM program, I would always advise everyone to wait a little while and then start an LLM program in after having a few years of practical experience. As Zsolt said, it for some people it works out, but I think it's a much safer bet if you go and work for a couple of years and then apply for an LLM. I think it's a much safer bet then.
Yeah, you mentioned this safe bet, of course, because if someone thinks that I will like this or that field and in kind of half year figures out after working that I actually hate it, then it was a little bit expensive if first he or she invests in an LLM. Yeah, thank you. Just saying to the audience that we have kind of 9 minutes left. So if you have more questions, please post it because we are running out of time. I have some questions anyway, but we also get an interesting one. It is actually to Zsolt. Have you ever thought about starting your own business instead of working for a multinational company?
Wow, that's a very good question because I have thought about it. It's I think everyone after a couple of years, a good couple of years in their career, starts to think about this. To be perfectly candid about this topic, so of course, when you're thinking about taxation and tax projects, you have to realize that complex tax projects are coming usually from big multinational companies. Small and even medium-sized businesses, often they just try to solve their tax issues with their accountant. They will not go to a specialized tax advisor. Whether that's the correct approach or not, that's a different question, but this is just simply the practice. So this means that as a tax advisor, you would be looking at mainly bigger, medium-sized to large companies as your clientele. On the other hand, these companies are rather picky in choosing their consultant. So they really are looking for a brand name that they recognize, that has a track record. Even though we're talking about the exact same people with the exact same knowledge set, simply having that that recognition, it's a very, very important factor in your success. That one, and also one additional thing, and maybe Dalibor in your field as well, simply the network of professionals these big firms are providing. It's such an infrastructure that, say, if I have a very unique question about, I don't know, Uganda VAT, I can turn to our partner office in Uganda. If I'm a standalone tax advisor, this would be a much trickier thing, because of course I can try to find someone in Uganda, but then I have to verify whether that person is reliable or not, and so on and so forth. So I think that I'm not saying that there's no reality in starting your own business, but on the other hand, you do have to see the reasons why these big consulting firms are so successful. And that the reason is that they do give a reason for people to stay around because it's beneficial.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I can only second what Jolt was saying. Access to the knowledge base, the infrastructure and all of this is a way bigger challenge if you're on your own. So, then no system is perfect, obviously. Even if you're on your own, there are pros and cons, but it's then I guess just, up to your own beliefs or up to your own needs and requirements to choose, which system to go to. But, big firms are also good platforms to work with.
Yeah. So we have kind of 5 minutes left, so I will monopolize the opportunity for the last questions. And I would like to ask you about your biggest achievements, because it takes a lot of determination and discipline to become an expert in your field. So what achievements are you the proudest of, and what recent challenges have you found most exciting?
I'll let Jolt go first, because this one is a really tough one.
Oh, okay. Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity. Well, obviously, from now 14 years of career, there's a lot of course, proud moments and interesting projects. Maybe one that stands out because of its sheer uniqueness was a couple of years ago. I had this opportunity to participate as one of the trainers in an OECD workshop that was provided in China to the Chinese tax authorities and 30 other tax authorities around the world. This project was obviously very exciting. besides myself, there was a representative of the OECD, a senior advisor, and two senior members of the tax authorities of the Australian and New Zealand tax authorities. So this was an amazing exchange of knowledge with peers, and up to this point, I'm remembering it as a fond memory. And as a recent challenge, well, as I mentioned, I relatively recently moved to Switzerland, and of course, this has been a very exciting time in my professional life. It's obviously challenging because, especially if you're joining on a managerial level in a Big Four to a different country, you have to build your own network and clientele, which is both challenging, but also it's a very rewarding process, because it really pushes your boundaries as a professional.
Good. So it's up to me. I think, one of my biggest achievements that I felt, content with, was actually a very recent case where, and it wasn't an international arbitration, it was actually local litigation, but there were the two private individuals who suffered some serious harm by the act of the Croatian state, and so we took Croatian state to a court, and and so unfortunately we lost on all levels, but just like 2 weeks ago we found out that on the constitutional court level, which is now the highest level of Croatian judiciary, the constitutional court overturned all the decision of the lower courts, including the Supreme Court of Croatia, and actually granted the satisfaction to these private individuals against the state. And that was kind of a very big moment for me, because these people were not able to afford big law firms representing them and having tons of lawyers doing stuff for them. It was really, for me, basically on a pro bono basis, and I was very, very happy for them to be able to to provide them with this victory against the almighty state, which is always a difficult thing. And Zsolt has these battles all the time, because it's always the state on the other side, so he knows what I'm talking about.
Fair enough.
Yeah. And so that's, I think that's maybe the most recent big time in my career. In terms of challenges, I think I don't know what exactly to say there. I also moved from a big international law firm to Croatia's, which is like a very boutique kind of law firm. But I wouldn't say that was a challenge. That was actually very pleasant thing, and I'm very happy, and it was a very welcome change, I think, overall.
Thank you very much. I think it is always good to finish something with highlighting the achievements and the successes. So thank you very much, Dalibor and Zsolt, for this interesting conversation and for sharing all your experiences and providing guidance to the future professionals. And thank you also for your attention. And if I may recommend to those who speak Hungarian to look at Ars Boni's website for the following events, because there will be a lot in Hungarian, and surely there will be one. The Ars Boni tech support even posted it in the chat tomorrow at 8 p.m. about how to get legal jobs abroad, and it will be in English for those who don't speak Hungarian. So thank you very much again for your time and for the conversation.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. It was a pleasure. Thank you so much.